Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're delighted to have you. I'm Leslie Wallach, Director, National Association of Regional Councils. This presentation will bring you highlights of opportunities for regions under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA. It is a mouthful. I trip over it all the time. So for those of you eligible for multiple infrastructure projects under IIJA, you know how overwhelming it is to keep track of all these new opportunities. So that's why we're so pleased that we have this all-star cast. And let me tell you, it is an all-star cast that you can probably see on your screen, who have joined us today, keep track of all these new opportunities. A big thank you to Arnita Hannon, who disappeared, our intergovernmental liaison, who is always there for us. And for those of you who have joined us before, you know how great EPA is at bringing us all these opportunities. We thank the EPA staff here and behind the scenes for all the work that you're doing. You'll see the breadth of the expertise that we have today. We're fortunate to have so many of the programs represented. So we have a full program. Arnita has signed up half of the EPA staff here. We're going to try and get through all the programs in an hour. We'll do three panels. We'll try and get in some questions in between. Anything we don't get to in the hour, we will forward to EPA and we will get all the information to you. We are being recorded, so everything that you see today and what you heard before we started officially will be sent to you via email as soon as we're done here. Plus, NARC has a YouTube channel, and this and previous webinars are available there. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce John Lucy, who is the Deputy Associate Administrator for Intergovernmental Relations. John joined EPA from the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, starting as a legislative analyst in 2016. He has served since 2019 as the Chief Strategy Officer, helping create and manage the strategic implementation of both North Carolina's Clean Energy Plan and Risk and Resiliency Plan. He's also provided guidance to the department on significant state initiatives, including the Duke Energy Coal Ash Settlement, North Carolina Environmental Justice and Equity Board, and the Clemor's consent order. Since 2021, John has served as senior advisor to EPA Administrator Michael Regan, helping the agency plan external engagements, developing the agency's PFAS roadmap. He serves in the Office of Intergovernmental Relations, in the Office of Congressional Intergovernmental Relations, following a brief stint as acting DAA. John holds a BA in Political Science from North Carolina State University, an Associate of Arts degree from the Central Piedmont Community College, and I have to take a breath, is currently a night student at Catholic University School of Law. So we're glad you're awake, and we thank you very much, John, for joining us.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Leslie, for that kind introduction. And I will join you in the struggles with the IIJ stuttering. That you'll notice a lot of my colleagues will still refer to it as Bill, and I think it just flows off the tongue a bit easier. But really appreciate both you and Neil for opening this opportunity for meaningful engagement with your members. It's my pleasure to join my EPA colleagues here today from the various program offices that Leslie just ticked through that are charged with administrating the unprecedented funding provided in the bipartisan infrastructure law, as well as other resources and partnerships that will help support our regions and communities. We also have our municipal ombudsman, Jamie, here as an observer. Jamie is always available for your membership for any conversations on meeting Clean Water Act obligations and related resources to support these efforts, and would really encourage you and your members to utilize Jamie. She's a terrific add to the agency here. As you hear from our 3 EPA panels across the different pots of funding provided in the bill, and about other resources that support our WIFIA program, the work of our Water Infrastructure and Resiliency Finance Center, and the engagement with communities by our state and local climate energy program, I know that the dialogue will be fruitful and that we will lay the groundwork for continuing strong partnerships with NARC membership. While I was not yet in my current position, I have heard about the great opportunity you afforded EPA to participate in the meeting of NARC's Energy and Environment Committee during our annual National Conference of Regions here in DC back this past February. Wendy Wilkes, the Senior Advisor for EPA's Office of Water, thoroughly enjoyed speaking to the major investments being made through bill and existing and increasing those resources to support our nation's water infrastructure, addressing emerging contaminants, and importantly, providing the technical assistance to communities of all sizes and demographics. We'd really love to keep that momentum going from now. Following passage of the bill, EPA is making significant investments in the health, equity, national infrastructure, and resilience of American communities while helping to create millions of jobs. I hope that today's session will not only provide for information sharing and guidance from our presenters, but will also showcase the leadership, experience, and perspective of NARC's members as we continue to strengthen our regional partnerships. We applaud you and all your successes implementing the key programs so far, but we want to understand your challenges, any barriers that you may be experiencing, and appreciate any input on how EPA funding can support and best meet your region's needs. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, engage with you all. And Leslie, I will toss it back to you to facilitate our open panel sessions.
Terrific. Thank you so much, John. Thank you for that. And as you can see, when you have questions, I know that you all have your own regional representatives, but I will say that EPA headquarters in DC is nothing but welcome and helpful to get you to the right person. So with that, we are going to go to panel 1, which is water infrastructure and related community water priorities, priorities and challenges, financing resources. We'll cover clean and drinking water, SRFs, other federal, state, local, and private resources. With that, I'm going to turn it to Michael Dean, Chief Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund.
Thank you, Leslie, and welcome everybody. And thank you for NARC for inviting us to join you for this. Look forward to sharing some information now, but probably more importantly, going forward over the next 5 years of, as John said, we call it bill implementation. Easier to say than IIJA or IJA, I'll probably refer it mostly as bill since it's been ingrained in us. So the Clean Water SRF program, I'm going to assume most of you are somewhat familiar with it. So given the limited time we have, I'll just kind of briefly talk about it before we get into the bill. So since 1988, when the Clean Water State Revolving Fund was established under the Clean Water Act, the SRF programs have provided $153 billion of assistance to various water quality projects across the country. You probably know that it's funded by the federal government through what we call capitalization grants, and then states provide matching dollars in the amount of 20% to those federal grants. And the real power of the SRF is its revolving nature. As principal and interest repayments come in, it builds up, and a large portion of the funding is from the revolving nature. For example, last year, fiscal year 22, the Clean Water SRF provided across the nation $8.2 billion in project funding. And that's during a year in which we received a federal appropriation of about $1.6 billion. So the 1.6 and the state match came in, but again, the bulk of the funding after all these years comes from the power of the revolving nature. The states, this is a very state-centric program, which is great. It's really structured in a way that allows states to address their particular community needs and priorities. And for the Clean Water SRF, those priorities can be very broad. Clearly, we fund wastewater treatment utilities and systems, but we also have broad eligibilities and uses in non-point source, various agricultural management practices, forest management practices for source water protection, all sorts of very innovative things that communities across the country and states as our partners are working with us to implement. So given that background, the bill provided a 5-year appropriation, a significant amount of additional capitalization. Over those 5 years, it provides $11.7 billion for what we call kind of the general SRF Clean Water State Revolving Fund, and that's for all of the eligibilities, some of which I mentioned earlier. And then it also, for the first time, provided a special supplemental appropriation of $1 billion over those 5 years to address emerging contaminants in communities across the country. So we're currently working with our state and utility partners to identify what is an emerging contaminant in the world of clean water. I think it's a little bit more established. My colleague Howard will talk about the drinking water SRF, and emerging contaminants and PFAS in particular, most recently, are really being looked at. So we're looking to see how to best utilize those funds. Importantly, all of those emerging contaminant funding dollars are going to be provided in what we call in the program language, additional subsidization. And we use that, which essentially means grant-like funding. So we use that phrase additional subsidization because it's important to remember that all SRF assistance is subsidized under statute. It has the loans have to go from 0 to market rate. Typically about 1.2% in the last few years has been the average. So particularly facing the current interest rate environment, we consider that's going to be very, very favorable going forward the next few years. So, but in addition to that subsidy, a certain amount can be provided as grant, principal forgiveness loans or grants. And that $1 billion in emerging contaminants is all in that form. Of the $11.7 billion of general funding over the next 5 years, 49% of that amount is to be provided by the states as additional subsidization grants or loan forgiveness to communities. To a subset of recipients. And for the Clean Water SRF, it's recipients, communities that meet the affordability criteria established by the state, trying to address disadvantaged communities and others. There's a few other eligibilities in there as well that have to do with energy and water efficiency, as well as some particular innovative projects. But the agency has put a strong focus on using this additional subsidization to reach communities that perhaps have not taken advantage of the benefits of the SRF program in the past. And we're working, I think you'll probably hear a little bit later, on significant technical assistance, something that John alluded to at the beginning, to work with communities to get them in place, to get the preparation in place, the design, engineering, rate structures, whatever they need in order to apply for SRF and other assistance, so that this investment is sustainable over time. It's not just a one-time shot out to communities, but it's provided in a way that's going to, for the first time, or sometimes the first time in a long time, some of these communities have a really sustainable water quality projects going forward. So I'll leave it with that for now and look forward to any questions after my colleagues on the water panel have their say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm turn to Howard now. This is Howard Rubin, Drinking Water SRF team.
All right, starting my camera. It says the host has stopped it, but I could talk even if it just says my name. My name's Howard Rubin. I'm Senior Financial Analyst with the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Program. The program was built on the successes of the Clean Water SRF, where the structure in place was copied largely for the Drinking Water SRF program. Much like the Clean Water SRF, it is grants to states, where states can then manage the funds to meet the needs of the broader state community. The two big distinctions between the Clean Water SRF and the Drinking Water SRF, oh, there I am. The primary one is the eligibilities. The Drinking Water SRF is geared towards drinking water utilities. A very broad range of potential projects into there, from getting right up to the source of the drinking water, to the transmission of the drinking water through the utility area, the water service area, throughout the community. The second big distinction between the Drinking Water SRF and Clean Water SRF is the Drinking Water SRF has built into it a subset within the grant where money can be used for what we call set-aside purposes. Much like the Clean Water SRF, most of the money goes towards infrastructure, but there is money available to support statewide programs, either operator certification or statewide capacity development planning, making sure that the utilities within the state have the wherewithal to manage themselves, as well as targeted assistance, anything that might build the knowledge infrastructure of the water infrastructure community within the state, helping utilities find out what might be potential new sources, if they're finding there are scarcity issues, planning for resiliency planning, really just for anything that you see that you have a problem. And the first step is, what do we do about it before you get to the infrastructure step? Funding within the state is available for those components as well. Under bill, the DWSRF, beyond a general appropriation, much like we would receive in typical year, received two further, well, it's like three further appropriations. One, again, for a broad purposes that are typical within the DWSRF, the full suite of eligibilities, but then two grants with narrower eligibilities, but for a considerable sum to help address those narrower eligibilities. Like the Clean Water SRF, there was money specific to PFAS and emerging contaminants for the drinking water SRF. It's $4 billion over the period of bill. And then very significantly as well, there was funding specifically to deal with the addressing and removing lead pipe and lead contamination. And that is $15 billion over the 5-year period. In addition to, much like the Clean Water SRF, and $11.7 billion over the same period to deal with the regular suite of eligibilities for the drinking water SRF. Unlike in typical years, this money comes with more subsidy potentially available to borrowers, for entities where a project can't proceed with the normal reduced rate, but might need additional subsidy available to proceed with the project. There was also, as part of bill, which Bev will get into next, there is EPA state funding, TA funding that will work hand in hand with state efforts to help communities that are in need as well. One of the unique elements of bill is that since it's not one-year funding, unlike the stimulus of about, I guess, a little over 10 years ago, ARA, it's not a one-shot deal. That projects in need or that benefit from bill funds, ideally, some of them now are shovel ready, but they don't need to be. There is also time to do an assessment, figure out what your needs will be, and move forward in one of the out years. So this is kind of a unique opportunity with these appropriations and in the environment we're in now. So with that, I'm going to then pass things on to Bev, and then when we're done, enjoy hearing your questions.
Thanks, Howard. Hello, I'm Bev Vasquez with the Water Finance the Water Finance Center. And we have a couple of services that we can offer to a whole bunch of different communities. I believe we're best known for our Water Finance Clearinghouse. It is a wealth of resources that include a bunch of different financial resources from different levels of government, state, federal, state, federal, and as well as some private resources in there as well. We include resources in addition to like webinars, case studies, other sort of resources that could be helpful. We also have a couple of learning modules on our site as well. So far we have SRF 101, a WIFIA 101, and a financing septic systems with many more learning modules to come. And one thing that our office does is we also provide what we like to call a community assistance compendium, where we will tailor a list of resources to the projects that a community is looking to fund, and provide a list of federal, state, local, and private resources, as well as a list of resources that could be used for the customer base, because we recognize that a lot of these projects for water infrastructure can result in rate increases, and which could be sometimes a burden to the community. So we can provide a list of resources that can help them provide cut costs elsewhere, if you will, or to save money elsewhere. So I'll go ahead and drop a link in the chat to not only our Water Finance Center, but also the Water Finance Clearinghouse. I recommend folks to sign up for our newsletter on our website, as we are also teeing up some technical assistance vehicles in place related to them. So with that, I will pass it on to our next colleague. Mary, have you spoken yet?
And I think next.
This
Mary.
is Mary Fasano. All right. Hello.
Hello.
I am putting a link in the chat to the WIFIA program. So I am an underwriter with Withia. We provide a long-term financing for stormwater, wastewater, and water projects throughout the United States. Projects can be as small as 5 million for small communities. We have no limit on the size of the loan. We provide 49% of financing for the projects. For small communities, which we define as populations of 25,000 or less, we can lend up to 80%. Our eligibility mirrors the eligibility for the state SRFs. We can also do programs of projects and do combined projects in one loan. Our loans are a fixed rate of interest that is based upon the federal funds rate, depending upon the average maturity of the loan. The loan can be for 35 years after substantial completion is reached. So if it takes 5 years for a construction project to complete, we can go 35 years after that. So you could have a 40-year loan. So it can be pretty long term. We used to operate on a competitive basis, but this year we have begun accepting applications on a rolling basis, which means that borrowers can apply when they're ready. And it also means we can speak to you during the application review process. The link that I put in the chat box will take you to our main webpage, where you can see the notice of funding availability that was just published, and we'll begin accepting applications in September. And it also gives you a place that you can sign up for our newsletter. So you'll get additional information on webinars that we're having or other notifications. There's a lot of information on our website about borrowers who we have worked with. We've closed 88 loans to date, and we're a new program that just started in 2014. We are very happy to speak with anyone individually about their project. So if you would like to schedule a meeting with Withia, you can just send an email to our main mailbox and we will respond promptly. So I will leave it at that because I know we have many more speakers, but we try to be very borrower friendly. So do call us if you think we can help.
Thank you so much to our entire panel. Appreciate it. I don't know. I don't see any questions in the chat. I don't know if anybody, Melissa, you've seen any, but if not, you see this, Mary, and which is your office? I see there's a question there in the chat. Mary is part of the
Yep, sorry. So my office, we are in the EPA headquarters office in the Office of Water. And it's the water, it is the WIFIA division within the Office of Water at EPA headquarters.
And Mary, would you spell out what WIFIA is?
WIFIA, so it's the Water Infrastructure Financing Investment Act.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stump you. Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
We get so used to our acronyms, we forget.
I know, right?
Real words. Thank you. Thank you so much to all the water group. I know there are probably other questions, and I know those of you who were with us in February at our conference, EPA was also out in force talking about these programs. And I know one of the issues is, quick question, how are things going with the states? I know representing local governments, it's always an issue about how well, have you heard any issues with states getting funding to being able to work with their local governments, and is that all working?
I'll start there. For the SRF programs, it's a bit of a process. They have to apply for these grants. So we're working with the states. We've just run through a series of training sessions. We're going to have a lot more through the summer to update that on various aspects of the bill. A very important part, I don't believe either, however I mentioned it, is to get for communities to get on the state's intended use plan. So they have to, every state has a project priority list, and for every capitalization grant they apply for, whether it be a general SRF one or one of the bill lead or bill rich contaminants, is to identify the projects that they intend to fund in any given year. So the state's in the process of applying those, preparing those intended use plans, finalizing them, and then applying for their capitalization grants as we speak. I think a few have come in already, and we anticipate quite a few more in the next few months. So it's working, but it just, again, if it's not money's appropriated and gets right out there, that's with this process, and the states are working very hard, and things are moving well.
A couple of other questions, and we'll just put forward one more question here. What is the 5-year appropriation for the broad purpose drinking water SRF?
I'll tackle that one. As it's for the drinking water SRF. Broad purpose, I'm sorry, yeah, there may have been a too narrow of a word. The eligibilities for the drinking water SRF, I would say very generally fall into, for the loan fund, maintaining the infrastructure, or addressing the infrastructure needs of a drinking water system so that they can stay in compliance or return to compliance with any issue with regarding under the Safe Drinking Water Act. Obviously, this could also include unregulated contaminants, as what is now part of the emerging contaminant pot and PFAS pot. Those are also, and lead can be funded under the broader eligibility or the broad purpose of the DWSRF. But it is, for the infrastructure purposes of maintaining your drinking water utility, so that you can provide drinking water that it complies and meets the standards of the Safe Drinking Water Act.
Thank you so much. I thank you. There are a lot of water questions. If there's anything left, we will send them along, because I'm not sure you're all going to be able to stay with us the whole time, but we're already behind. So I thank you to Michael, Howard, Mary, and Bev for the water team. I'm going to turn now to Brownfields and Superfund support. So with that, I think that Megan, that is you.
Yep, that's me. Good afternoon, everybody. I will be quick and hope to get us back on schedule a little bit. For those of you who don't know what the Brownfields and Land Revitalization Program is, it is, I sit in headquarters, but most of our program are in your regions. And the brownfields are very simple. They're smaller contaminated sites. So picture the corner gas station that's abandoned that you drive by, or a dilapidated building, or a dilapidated part of your community that may or may not have any contamination. Those are the sites that we are interested in helping to alleviate any sort of concern about contamination. And then we, through our assessment program, and then we also offer grants to clean up the sites through our regular cleanup grants and our revolving loan fund grants. We're really excited because our bill, or the infrastructure law, as I like to call it, gave us $1.5 billion over 5 years. This was an incredible infusion of cash for our program. We are a $250 million per year program, and now we are getting an additional $300 million each year. 1.2 billion of that will go towards our competitive grants. Those are our most popular programs. Those are the cleanups, the revolving loan funds, the multi-purpose grants, our job training grants, and our assessment grants. We also are getting 300 million over 5 years for our 128A state and tribal response programs. This is very important because we at EPA our voluntary program, the Brownfields program, is so we do not oversee and certify cleanups. That is done by states and tribes. So this money is really critical to help with the big pipeline of sites we are expecting to come through. And that has been really static appropriated funding over the past decade, usually about 46, 47 million. So to have an additional 50 million for the next, 60 million for the next 5 years is a real exciting thing for our program. I'm going to drop a link to our infrastructure plan over the next 5 years into the chat. So I invite everybody to take a look at that. As we continue to make policy decisions. We've already got our 300 million of 2022 funds planned, and we're moving on to 2023. We'll have a host of competitive grants. Those proposals will be due in November, and we will award projects next summer. So look for those guidelines for our assessment, multipurpose, cleanup, revolving loan fund grants. Look for those in August or September. And I'll pause here so I can turn to my colleague in Superfund. And if anybody has any questions, again, my name is Megan Quinn. You can feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joshua.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure being with you today. I'll tick through these talking points pretty quickly, but I'm sure there will probably be some follow-up questions. So quickly, I am currently a detailee to the Office of Superfund and Remedial. It's a Superfund remedial program. We have a much longer title that we won't get into, but it's the remedial program. So for us, the bipartisan infrastructure law invests $3.5 billion in remediation at Superfund sites and reinstates the Superfund chemical taxes, making it one of the largest investments in American history to address legacy pollution. One point I do want to make, and so for other programs within the agency, the BIL funding is actually, is creating new programs throughout the agency. And for us, this was basically a supplemental chunk of money that we are getting in to help us with our backlog of Superfund sites that has been growing over the years, just due to sheer lack of investment and low appropriation. So this has been just a $3.5 billion for us. Has just been it's obviously going to be supplementing the programming and helping us get rid of that backlog. Because there is no state cost share requirement for remedial actions conducted with infrastructure funding, we are dedicating that funding to all remedial action construction work following our longstanding prioritization and funding approach until their funding runs out. The infrastructure funding has allowed EPA to initiate work on all backlogged remedial action construction projects and accelerate cleanups at over 100 NPL sites across the country. While the bill waived the cost share requirement, it did not affect all other state assurances required under CERCLA, like operation and maintenance. EPA regions are working with their state counterparts to ensure all applicable assurances are reflected in the Superfund state contracts or cooperative agreements where BIL funds are being used for remedial action work. We are currently on track to obligate about $1 billion of the 3.5 we've already received. And if you know anything about EPA, to me, this is nothing but a miracle to be able to obligate $1 billion in 1 year. So kudos to the infrastructure here within the agency to get that money out onto contracts. And we hopefully, we'll continue to see that acceleration of getting the money out over the next couple of years. In addition to eliminating the backlog of NPL sites with remedial action construction projects awaiting funding, the infrastructure funds are enabling the Superfund program to dedicate its congressionally appropriated funding to all non-construction work, such as remedial investigations, remedial designs, and support and core cooperative agreements. Simply put, since we're using all of the BIL funds to get out and start doing the construction level work, our pipeline work that we do to prep sites to be, national priorities list sites, our appropriated dollars are being used to be able to accelerate that part of the process. So really the BIL funding is uplifting the entire program, not just for the construction side of the house. So I think that's important to note. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't see any questions. Yes, we have a Brownfields question. Can you clarify? Brownfield newsletter indicates award ceiling is much higher than the normal 500,000 for community assessment grants, but I'm getting different information from the regional rep. Can you confirm?
Yeah, so what you'll see is that that's still policy that's under development. It is true that the infrastructure funding authorized us to do assessment grants up to 10 million. We are likely never going to do $10 million assessment grants. It just gave us that authority to do it. It is all policy, but we will likely do a portion of the bill funding at a higher amount than 500K, but we have not announced and decided what that will be. And what it is in 2023 is not what it will be in 2024 either. So you'll just have to stay tuned on that one.
Thank you very much. There are lots of great links that our speakers have put in the chat. We're saving that. We will send that out. Just want to remind everybody that we are recording this. We will send this out to everybody once we are finished. And because it's a lot of information, but if you look in the chat, you'll see, and we will be sure to be sending those out as well. And thank you. You're right, Megan and Joshua, you got us back on track. I thank you very much. I'm going to turn now to our final panel, which is partnerships to support clean and healthy air quality. And this is with the Office of Radiation. And I'm going to turn to Carl, who I don't see, but I'll turn to Andrea because I do see you. So let me introduce Andrea Denny, the lead environmental protection specialist. Thank you, Andrea.
Hi, everyone. So certainly I will not need the whole of this time to talk about my program. So hopefully we can find Carl or someone else from our transportation office who can talk about the clean school bus funding. So I'm sure that's something of interest to a lot of people, but I'll start with a little bit about my program. So unlike many of the other speakers on this panel, my program does not have direct funding to talk about, which is also why I was going to keep my remarks fairly short. But the program I'm in is the State and Local Climate and Energy Program in the Office of Air and Radiation, and we offer support to state, local, and tribal governments who are pursuing climate and energy programs. So what that means is we have a lot of tools and technical assistance and peer exchange to help cities and tribes and states understand what the, kind of how to decide what actions to take, how to assess those actions for both environmental benefits as well as economic and health benefits, and how to do that whole evaluation process. So for those of you that are pursuing infrastructure funds or receiving infrastructure funds, our program has resources that can help you decide how to most effectively spend those dollars. For example, if you're going to get EECBG funding from DOE and you're not sure what the best projects to spend that on, we may be able to help with some of that guidance. Or if you have completed a project and you're trying to figure out, well, how do I get from kilowatt hours saved to emission savings or to what that means for health benefits, our program can help with that. So in a very quick nutshell, that's what we do. We have a lot. We start with everything from how do I do a greenhouse gas inventory to even understand what my emissions are, to looking at emissions benefits from the electricity system or from other places, as well as converting that into health benefits. We also have some resources to support looking at some of the energy equity implications of the work that's happening. So if you're, thinking about how do you make sure that benefits are going to environmental justice communities or low-income residents, we can help connect you with folks that are doing that work or help answer those questions. So I'm going to stop there. I see that Carl is on. I'll let him talk and then we can have questions at the end if that works for everyone. So I'm staying on, so I'll be here. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to tell you about the program, and I dropped the link in the chat and I hope you'll check it out.
And I know that there will be interest. NARC has a very active equity group, so I know there's a lot of interest. I'm sure we'll be in contact. And thank you very much. And Carl, we're sorry for not elevating you earlier. You weren't late. It was just we we forgot to beam you up. So here you are. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. And I did get a chance to listen in on all of it, so it all worked out great. I will spend just a few minutes talking about the Clean School Bus Program part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. This program has allocated $5 billion to the replacement of school buses. School buses is about 500,000 across the country. So as large a number as 5 billion is, that does not cover even a decent number of school buses. So we are looking to use this program as a way to give a lot of experience for folks for new technologies, specifically electric buses, which are becoming increasingly popular, but also propane, natural gas, and hydrogen, and I think there's one other category that I'm missing, are called out in the statute itself for potential funding opportunities. Our first funding stream is open. It is on epa.gov/clean school bus. So if you take away nothing from my conversation, that website is the kind of the be all catch all site for us. So the application is up. It is a rebate program. So not a grant, so a rebate. So basically, we have allowed for basically a one-page application. It's going to be a lottery system nationwide. There are a couple of different categories of funding. So if you're a prioritized school district, so if you meet certain low-income criteria that the education department laid out, or if you're rural, or if you're a tribal area, then you can receive full funding for an electric school bus, which is on the order of about up to $375,000 is what our current market estimates are. And if you're not, then it's still $250,000 towards an electric school bus. And again, I'm not going to go through all the details on the website, but there are other funding amounts for different technologies as well. That closes on August 19th. So we're really interested and want to see as many applications as we possibly can get. We have a good start already. I think we're over 100 million in applications already towards our $500 million goal. We will make some decisions on when who the applicant awardees will be, hopefully September-ish. We're trying to go as fast as we can so we can start flowing money in October. So that school districts can get their bus orders in as fast as they possibly can. This does allow for, we have figured out a way for private transportation providers to apply. So about 40% of students in the country are transported back and forth from home to school via private transport to public schools. So those companies can apply here as well. And we know there's a couple of states that kind of run their own program. Those they are eligible as well too, but mostly this will be a local application process, we think. We're very excited about the opportunity here, and we'll note that the rebate program is our first funding. There will be multiple opportunities over the course of the program here over the next few years. We're targeting a grants program for later this year, so probably late fall is when we put it out. That will look different than the rebate program, so we can try to do some different things there as well too. So we're very excited to hear from folks. If you have suggestions, issues, congratulations, praise is always appreciated as well too. But we know that the rebate program works for an awful lot of people. We wanted it to be fast, easy, and accessible. But with that, we had to make some choices. So we know there's some school districts that probably don't. This model doesn't fit very well for their current cycle. So we are going to take what we learned from this process and do better next time, and do better the time after that, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I'll stop there and allow for some questions. But again, epa.gov/clean school bus would be the place to go. And there are some preliminary steps before the application has to go in. If a school district or other eligible entity is interested, mostly it's getting it's called a sam.gov account, which allows for us to actually send money to somebody. That is unfortunately, multi-week process, it looks like, to get that approved. And we can't send cash or checks to anybody if they don't have that account.
Thank you.
I think I'll stop there.
That's great. Thank you so much. I don't see any. So, Carl, you gave some upcoming dates. So you're saying October is the next thing to watch out for?
So October, we'll try to send money. I think the next upcoming date is August 19th would be the date.
Okay.
That's when the application period closes. So that'll be a hard stop. So we'll take the whole suite of things we have before us and then make decisions on awards with that pool of applicants. So the next couple of, we're basically a month into this. We have 2 months here for people to get their information in order and put their application in.
Great, thank you so much. There's information in the chat. You know where to go if you're looking for help on school bus issues. Mary, there is a question about the WIFIA program. Can EPA assist communities that have existing local revenue bonds? Mary's still there. I know it's hard to just keep focused. Everybody has so many things going on. I have a question, another general question. Are there other upcoming deadlines that everybody should know about? If anybody wants to jump in or has a moment. I think not. Any other questions from our audience here that they'd like to give a final shot? We have EPA, and we appreciate the staff being here with all the multiple events they have going on. As you can see, that there is a lot here to balance, a lot of various funding streams that are coming out, and different programs. I would say you can reach out to anybody that you've spoken to today on the that we've seen on the chat. Anybody who's spoken with us from the various offices. If there are no other questions, then I'm going to turn to Neil or Melissa. Do you see any that I'm missing?
So there is one, Leslie. What type of technical assistance is expected for reaching disadvantaged communities for SRF?
Hello. So as I mentioned, I guess there are, particularly through the drinking water SRF, there are, I guess, two answers to this question. One is, as I mentioned earlier, in addition to, when a state gets a capitalization grant, it makes a decision how much of it it's going to put into the revolving infrastructure portion of its fund and how much will be used for this type of state technical assistance, where, it can be, again, for planning and design, capacity development, source water protection, et cetera. The question is, what type of technical assistance is expected? One thing I'd want to point to, you may have to scroll up from where you posted your question, Lindsay, but I put in a link to the DWSRF landing page. It has set aside fact sheets that go into some of the types of assistance that have been used, as well as their eligibility handbook that talks about eligibilities both for the loan fund and the set aside portion. But again, broadly speaking, there are categories of special assistance include technical assistance, which might include, again, planning and design, asset management plans. They include such topics as wellhead protection and source water protection, coming up with plans, and even loans to help do riparian zones. And what we broadly call capacity development, which is, can include improving the technical capacity of a system, the financial capacity if it doesn't have a very advanced or evolved rate setting or rate collection system, for example. Managerial capacity. I know there's training for water system board members. Almost anything you could think of that will help a water system manage itself can be can be eligible under these set-asides. The states manage the set-asides and make decisions about how to use them and how to balance them. So I would get in touch with the state SRF of whatever state you're in. That is through the DWSRF, the funding that is available. Bev mentioned technical assistance funds that were also coming from EPA that can be coordinated, but from the SRF, that's the type of technical assistance that can and does benefit disadvantaged communities.
Thank you very much. There was a question about just generally all the EPA and the other Infrastructure Act programs. There is a White House guidebook which has a link to all the programs that are available under the IIJA, and we're going to put that in the chat for you. And we got the question about, we will include the links in the information we send back out to you, and we will send you this webinar recording so that you have it with a quiz, and that we are happy to take any questions in our office and follow up with you. You can find us, Leslie, Leslie at narc.org, or any of the staff will be able to guide you to the right place. But I'm looking to see if there are any other questions. And Neil, are you seeing any others?
I do not.
All right, if we can put to the White House infrastructure report in the chat as well, we will send that out to you, which is a compilation of all the different programs in the different agencies that to help keep track of the different programs. If there are no other questions, I am going to say thank you to all of you. And let me say one that there is Bev is put in the chat that their office is hosting a webinar on July 13th related to the water infrastructure, and there's a link there which we will send out to you. With that, if there is nothing else, I want to thank Michael, Howard, John, Mary, Bev, Megan, Joshua, who have I missed? Carl and Carl and Andrea. Want to thank you all for sticking with us for the hour. Thank you to all our participants, attendees, and we look forward to chatting with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Say thank you very much. Bye-bye.